Okay, so finally got a movie that somebody wanted me to do that they thoroughly love. And I'm not going to lie about it, but I really love it too. This is the year that Inception turns 15 years old. 15 years ago, this film came out. And it feels crazy to think that it's that old or that I'm that old, I guess you could say. It also feels crazy to think about how many people were born after the fact that have grown up not knowing this movie or thinking about it like it's an older movie in that sense. And it's just like such a fantastic film. Not even just the idea of, it being a Christopher Nolan masterpiece. It's one of his best films in my perspective at least. I'm also a big Batman fan. I have my pros and cons about his Dark Knight trilogy, but Inception is just above and beyond everything else in my honest opinion. Now Nolan has been around for a long time, and Nolan's been doing movies since the late 90s. It would surprise you enough to know that he's only got like a dozen films on his record, and he's working on his 13th film. He's about to hit his baker's dozen in films, and he's working on the Odyssey right now, which is apparently getting this crazy cast connected to it. But his filmography goes all the way back to 1998 with a film called Following, which I don't think I've ever seen or really heard of until I was looking up a little bit of information before I started talking about this. Because the first film that I knew about from Christopher Nolan was Memento. Now, Memento is a polarizing film for a lot of people because some people love it, some people hate it. I love the concept of it. A man with like a 2 minute memory has to try to solve like a crime, if I remember correctly. It's just a really, really crazy concept, and that's what he's known for. So that was the start of his movie career, of having these way out there ideas that just led into some of the best films that most people have ever done. Like we're talking about The Prestige, we're talking about Interstellar, we're talking about Oppenheimer. This is a guy who has a certain visual style that it's exemplary when it comes to the stories he's telling. Now, one of his films I haven't seen yet is a film called Tenet, and I've heard a lot of mixed things about that simply because some people say it's a little confusing. He does a little bit of that time jumpy stuff, from what I understood. It's it seems like that was a film that might have lost him a bit of hype simply because it wasn't. I don't think it was bad, but I just don't think it was as good as it probably could have been. Now I'm just going based off what I've heard and what I've read. I have not actually seen Tenet. I do want to at some point. I just I know that when I sit down, I need to be prepared to be slightly confused and have way more of an attention than I think I've probably have given. I don't know, maybe any movie in a while. Like most stuff doesn't really need an exorbitant amount of attention unless it's in a different language and you got to read subtitles. But Tenet sounds like one of those things where you almost got to pause it every couple of minutes because you got to understand what just happened or what you might be missing. That's just from what I got from reading stuff. But Tenet is not what we're talking about. I'm kind of digressing just because I want to kind of discuss Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker. I've loved him for decades. I really appreciate his writing style. I appreciate his cinematography. I appreciate what he's able to bring to a movie to make it worthwhile and to make it worth sitting through. Now, Inception is one of those films that's it's just a one of a kind. It's just a film that kind of there's nothing really like it. I don't think there's anything been before it. I don't think they're ever going to be able to do anything after it. The concept of manipulating dreams and how he pulls it off is just one of the most amazing things to watch, and it still holds up to today. There's a lot of talk online about how there is a decline in what CGI was sort of able to do and what visual effects have done in the past and what they kind of are doing now. Almost like people are saying that they're getting lazy. There's a laziness to the visual effects these days. So when you go back to those older movies, it almost looks better than what they're doing now. And Inception feels like one of those movies that almost nothing really has done what it does, but it does kind of try to exceed it and maybe not in the best way possible. So, like, a lot of people might correlate Doctor Strange to what Inception tries to kind of pull off, simply because Doctor Strange has a very similar visual effect that you see throughout the movie. But Doctor Strange is also vastly more drawn out. It's way more happening than just what Inception does. And Inception is more of a simplistic outlook on what that is, and it gives you just enough where it's not overbearing. And then you look at Doctor Strange and you know that that's a character that's sort of meant to have that, so the overbearingness is acceptable. But if you just want a little bit of that, you get something like Inception. So now, what is Inception for anybody who probably was born after that film came out, or maybe people who just never really cared to watch it to begin with? Inception is a film about a man named Dom, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and his partner Arthur, who's played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. They play thieves in a way, like con men, so to speak. And what they use as their tool is they use dreams as a weapon. So they steal people's thoughts or they manipulate their subconscious into sort of running schemes in a way. We only get to see a very minimal portion of that at the very beginning, because then they immediately get put into this sort of con where the guy who they're running the dream scam on was doing it as a test on them. And what he wants is he wants to see if they can actually do it. So he wants them to do what's called an inception. An inception is a hard thing to do because what you're trying to do is you're trying to input authentic thoughts into somebody's brain. You're trying to convince somebody that they had this thought naturally by planting it in their subconscious. And they think Dom can pull it off. Now, the world that's just set with just what I just said, the universe that is made by the concept of Inception, is that there's a world that exists where these tools are readily available for this idea to exist. Like when you're talking futuristic, sort of sci-fi esque world building plot devices, there is nothing like the idea of a dream state manipulator. This sort of tool that allows, so the way they explain it is that they used it for military purposes, which is one of the most true to life connections that you could make with something like that, because that's almost how all technology starts off. It starts off as a military processed idea. Wi-Fi, before we got Wi-Fi, the military got Wi-Fi. Before we got computers, the military got computers. That's just the way that technology has worked in this country specifically. I don't know about the rest of the world. I'm not that smart, but I know that most of these things started off as military applications first. So essentially, these devices and this method was used as a military prop to help train the soldiers, because it was able to build and simulate what actual combat would be like without there being any actual casualties. So they would get training, and that training would be embedded because it's still in your mind. You are using your mind as a skill without using your physical body to do anything, which is fucking amazing. Like, we're talking about something that's so bizarre that it feels unrealistic, but it also feels real at the same time, because what a fucking way to make this concept feel so visceral that it doesn't it doesn't sound like it's unfathomable. At least to me. I'm a far-fetched thinker, and it doesn't seem like it's very impossible. You know, there's people all over the world that talk about dreams differently or how our mind works. You know, there's theories all over the place. We only use 10% of our brain's actual power. The capacity of your brain is the same memory storage as 400 computers, or any of those crazy theories or those crazy explanations of how the brain works. What is to say that the idea of the dream stuff isn't also something that's just so unique that it could be weaponized in this way at some point in the near future? Because here's how they do it: they use a specific compound that is given to the person in order to manipulate a lot of that thought process. So in this world, not only does it become this sort of tool for either the military purposes of what it originally was intended for, or for what Dom uses it for, and the thieving stuff and the conning stuff, but it's also actually used as sort of a worldwide drug in a way. It's an addiction. People get addicted to these dreams because the compounds that are used for them can make the dreams so realistic that you almost don't feel like you're dreaming. And so people get addicted to that. It's like better than alcohol or meth or cocaine. It's better than any of that stuff. So there's compounds of these people that just pay to be set up on these machines to take the formulas to make their dreams like the better reality for them. They don't want to live in the real world. They rather be asleep and in the dream world regardless if it's fake or not, they'd rather be there. And that's also a very interesting world plot device to take this tool that's used for all of these different aspects, but it's not too futuristic. It just feels like something that's used for the wrong thing when it was meant for more useful purposes, which is almost anything in the real world. So how do you not sort of correlate the realism to that? I don't know. It could just be me, and maybe I'm just going off on a banter, but I feel like that's one of the most unique things about Inception is its connection to all of the different portions of reality that it actually can relate to for anybody. Anybody who knows anybody who's dealt with addiction can actually see this and go, what's meth? Meth is an escape. What is any sort of drug that's out there? They're escapes from something. Why not escape into the dream world? Why not be this person who just lives a thousand years? Okay, that's another thing I didn't get into. They they also explain how dreams can sort of be compounded from time. So 5 minutes in the dream world is 5 minutes sleeping from the real world. Our 5 minute time is an hour in the dream world. And then they have the compound, which if they produce a sample that's of a certain level of strength, they can compact that even more so. So I think he said like 10 hours would be the same as 6 weeks or something. So you're saying a full 8 hour workday is essentially just living a whole month of your life and then waking up and realizing that not a single day has passed. And there's this whole subplot in the film about how he and his wife were sort of really obsessed with it in that fashion because he's been this guy that sort of was doing it a little bit more reputably, and he had a wife and he had kids, and they were both kind of experts on that. And how that's explained is how you sort of get that, or how it sort of leaks into civilian life out of the military, is because it wasn't the military that built it, there were architects that built it. So the architects that built it, of course, it kind of belongs to them. So it finds its way into public use, and now everybody kind of has the use of it. It doesn't really like say that outright. That's just kind of how I interpreted it. That the people who built it were able to actually build it outside, and were able to get it where it's not just for military, but that's sort of how it started. And Dom Cobb, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, he and his wife get so enthralled in that world that they literally spend decades there, and it creates this level of confusion in his wife where she doesn't know if she's sleeping or awake. She can't tell the difference between the dream and reality. And that's what the downfall of this idea is that you have people who get addicted to it, and that addiction creates this mentality that is unhealthy to the point where you don't know what reality is. And she gets so bent out of shape about it, she actually winds up killing herself, because if you die in a dream, you wake up. So she thinks she's dreaming when she's actually awake, and because she kills herself, he makes this subconscious version of her in his head that he can't get rid of. So because he can't get rid of her, he's kind of just the brains of the operation. So when he's presented with this scam, the concept of pulling off an inception, he needs another person to build the dream for him, because even though he can build dreams, she will ruin it. That is his sort of weakness in the movie, is that he has his wife that's constantly going to ruin what he's trying to do. He can't get her out of his head. Now, because of her death, he's also fled the United States, and he's considered a criminal. So the number one reason he's doing this is because the guy who wants him to do it has offered him anonymity, so he can return to the States and return to his children, because his children are very much still alive. They just don't have their mother, and their father's on the run. So he wants to go home, so that's why this is a big deal for him. So he gets offered the concept of pulling off an inception. So he starts building a team. He starts building the people who he needs that is going to be able to create the best case scenario to make Inception work. And one of the trials is nobody in this world has ever been able to make an Inception work. It's just a concept. There is no way that you can manipulate natural thought. You can't convince somebody without telling them outright what to do. One of my favorite lines that he says in a helicopter.
What do you want from us?
Inception. Is it possible?
Of course not.
If you can steal an idea from someone's mind, why can't you plant one there instead?
Okay, here's me planting an idea in your head. I say to you, don't think about elephants. What are you thinking about?
elephants.
Right, but it's not your idea because you know I gave it to you. The subject's mind can always trace the genesis of the idea. True inspiration is impossible to fake.
And he uses that as a sort of way of explaining how you can't embed into somebody's brain true inspiration, because they're always going to know the source of where that inspiration comes from. So to manipulate a person's dream in order to implant true inspiration, true original thought, is impossible. But Cobb is going to try to make it happen because he wants to go home. Now, that's a very... I went off on a little bit of a tangent with a lot of stuff just because I really do love this movie. And this was a suggestion from one of my subscribers. She was super awesome in the comments. So we were talking about Inception and she really wanted me to do a video on it. So I'm doing that for her. This goes out to Latasha Evans. I do hope you enjoy this. What she really wanted to know is just how I felt about the film. So that's sort of how I feel in regards to how awesome this movie is and just a quick synopsis of it. And now what I really want to get into is the number one thing that this film really brought up for me and a lot of other people that I was close with back in the day. Just about everybody, I feel. And that's the debate on the ending. Is Cobb awake or is he still dreaming? Now, I've had discussions with people, and to this day, I will die on the hill that Cobb is not awake. He's not awake. And I know that there's meant to be the way that he manipulates the ending and how you're meant to view that ending, questioning whether or not he's alive or still dreaming, whether or not he wakes up with everybody or whether or not he's stuck in there. I will tell you now, my opinion, he's still dreaming. He does not wake up. He is going to be stuck in that dream and nobody's going to be able to get him up. That's my perspective based on what I saw in the little clues that were set up and whether or not those were kind of just manipulations. I look at them as being breadcrumbs to the official answer to the question whether or not Cobb is alive or dead. Now, most people might just look at that and think, oh yeah, it's movie stuff. So if you look at that ending scene, when he wakes up, nobody says a word. Nobody's talking to him. Nobody's actually able to say anything. Even when he goes to the airport and he meets up with Michael Caine's character and they go to the house and they see his kids, the first words that anybody says is him to its kids. Now, throughout the movie, you are seeing that he has a manifestation of his kids as well in his dream, just like he has a manifestation of his wife. So because he has a manifestation of his wife, that's why I believe this manifestation of his kids is closed off to him, because he refuses to accept that they are like not really there, so he doesn't want to acknowledge them. And if he acknowledges them, he's worried that they're not real. Now, when you look at how they're represented in every scene that they pop up in that film, they are always the same age. They are the age he remembers them when the last time he saw them was, when he was leaving that house, and they are in the exact same spot. What are the chances he shows up? Because they also don't give a time frame, I don't believe. I can't remember exactly. They don't give a time frame of how long he's been gone for. But what are the chances he shows up and they're outside playing exactly how he's envisioned them every time a vision pops in his head throughout this whole 2-hour, 3-hour movie? The chances are astronomically low. It's like 0.001% that they would be in the exact same position. And why would they even be in that house? Who's watching them in that house? Nobody's there. This teacher, he knows from London. Earlier on in that movie, he met him in London. So now the teacher, his friend, is over there in New York, catching him, bringing him to his kids. How did he get there? Why is he there? I don't remember if they ever did explain that in the movie, or if they said that, go out there and get them ready or whatnot. But even if he's going out there and getting them ready, there's nobody watching them. You don't see a maid. You don't see a babysitter. He went to go, even if there was a scene, and if I can't remember, even if there was a scene where he told Michael Caine's character, go out and be with the kids and I will be there when this is all over. He left them to go to the airport to pick him up, to bring him back to the house. Why didn't he bring the kids with him? Who did he leave the kids when he left? Because what happens is he brings them back to the kids and then he fucks off out of the room. And there they are in the kitchen, going outside, laughing and talking, and they haven't aged a day based on what his last time he saw them was. Now, I can't remember if they said that it was a certain long period of time where he was actually gone and not with them, but just those little key points lead me to believe he's still sleeping. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people think that when he's using the totem, oh, that's the other thing I didn't explain. Everybody should have a totem when they're in the dream world, and those totems will tell them whether they're sleeping or awake. So, Cobb's totem is a spinner, and the spinner is a good representation. It's probably the best representation that anybody has, and I've only think they've shown like one or two people and their totems, but nothing's as good as the top. So he's spinning the top, and the whole point is that if he's in the dream, the top doesn't stop. If he's awake, the top will eventually stop spinning and topple over. And you see him do that a couple of times, just so you get the idea of what the top is meant to do. Now, some people think that there's a little bit of a jolt that the top does that makes you believe it's going to stop, but I don't think that's a substantial enough reason to think that the top's not spinning, because when you look at how long it's actually spinning for, I think it's a matter of like seconds the top can go for. They showed it at a certain scene, and I think that's the top spins, and it spins for about 3 to 5 seconds before it topples over and it stops spinning. When you see him start the spinner in the kitchen, and the kids come in and they're all happy to see each other and everything's great and everything's all happy ending. It's spinning for like 10 seconds and it's going. That to me is a significant amount of time for a top like that to spin, especially when we were just shown that it really is only supposed to take 3 to 5 seconds, maybe 7 seconds, I'll give you. It spins for like 10 to 12 seconds when you count when he starts it to when the kids come in, to when he picks them up, to when they're all cheering, to when they're all running outside, and then the slow pan down. Look at the actual time of how long that's spinning for. It's like anywhere from 10 to 12, maybe 15 seconds. It's not meant to spin for that long. It's already been established how long that thing spins for, and it's less than 5 seconds. So it's 3 times the amount. So just a little nick on the table isn't enough for me to believe that it's going to stop eventually. Hi, how are you? Jesse from the future. Yeah, so ignore all that I was saying about the 10 to 12 second mark. As you can tell, I've actually done the time count in what I just did for the cuts there. And yeah, I have no sense of time. So yeah, my brain processes that as 10 to 12 seconds, but obviously it's longer. So it kind of also feeds into my point a little bit more. So yeah, just ignore me talking about 5 seconds this and 12 seconds that. I'm just dumb. He stops the film right there on purpose because he wants you to think about what actually happened to Cobb. And to me, those are the clues that I have that Cobb is dead. Or I shouldn't say dead, but Cobb is asleep, and who knows if he's ever going to wake up. Now, we're never going to get a sequel, and we're never going to get an official answer, but there are some people that really do believe that he wakes up and everything's good and it all works out. But I just believe that he actually never wakes up, and I think that's an even more daunting ending, and maybe that's why I kind of want that ending to be true, because this is the kind of film where, yes, a happy ending is deserved, but now it's your perspective on what a happy ending is. Is the happy ending reality, or is the happy ending the reality you create for yourself? And that goes back to dreams or manifestation or just personal. When you look at how people are when it comes to the dreaming stuff in this universe, people would rather live in the dream world than in reality. So maybe this is a way of saying Cobb could easily have woken up and have gone and gotten his kids and lived happily ever after there. But maybe any representation of his kids or their life is good enough for him. So is it a happy ending all around because the kids aren't essentially real, but they're still real to him? It begs a lot of questions when you really have to debate whether or not you believe he's alive or still asleep. But to me, I've been saying it for 15 years. He's asleep. That's my genuine consensus on the Inception film, is that he is asleep and he's always going to be asleep. Now that might have been heavy in the spoilers. Maybe I'll go back and edit a little bit so I can Maybe I'll go back and edit a little bit so I can warn you guys before I do this in-depth thing, because it is 15 years old, but there might be somebody out there that's never seen it, and here I am spoiling the ending for you and giving you my synopsis. But if you are watching it for the first time and now you're watching this video, thank you, first of all, and I hope that you got some insight or maybe a different perspective on this film and its ending. It's a very polarizing ending. It's definitely one of the most uniquely twisted, kind of literally split in half film endings that I've seen ever in life. That I have literally spoken to so many people who are on the he's awake bus, and they think I'm out of my mind thinking he's still asleep. And then I've seen people that agree with me that he's asleep and he's never going to wake up. And I feel like that's just a good thing. When you can have good discussion about a movie like this and be so enthralled by what the actual truth is, that's not only is that a good film, but that's just good fucking storytelling. That's my opinion. That's just some of the best fucking storytelling you're ever going to get. And Christopher Nolan is one of the few that you're actually going to get it from. If you made it this far, you are awesome. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and let YouTube know I'm doing a good job. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and check out the other videos in the studio. All of this helps support me and the channel, so it is very appreciated. Whether you're new or returning, thanks for watching. Cheers.